Hello, everyone, and welcome to No Offseason. I'm Zena.
I'm Chantel Jennings.
And I'm Sabreena Merchant.
And today on the show, if you follow college sports, you know the Indiana Hoosiers captured their first ever college football championship this year, national championship, going undefeated. Their rapid success was built through a unique combination of strong coaching, strategic use of the transfer portal, and significant financial investment. So it got us thinking, where do we see that same blueprint in women's college hoops? We're going to look at some of the teams that are trending in that direction. But first, coming off an action-packed weekend full of matchups, we're going to get into the Sabreena scale. It's back, guys. I know, I haven't said that in a long time, but it's been back. We're talking college hoops. SEC, going to start with that one where another one bites the dust. Only one undefeated team left in the country. And of course, Vandy finally took an L. Okay, South Carolina dominated Vanderbilt on Sunday, 103-74. The Gamecocks remain at number 2, while Vanderbilt slides from number 4 to number 5 on the Sabreena scale. Sabreena, what were you seeing in both teams as that game played out? And did this matchup change your view of either team at all?
I love the idea of South Carolina just being this gatekeeper of college basketball supremacy in the women's hoops world. And it's like, Vanderbilt, you think you're cute. Come to CLA. Let's see how this goes, you know?
Right. Especially after a loss to Oklahoma. They were revved up.
Mm-hmm. South Carolina's
you
not
don't want to. I mean,
games
there's a lot of teams you don't want to face after a loss, but like South Carolina at home, uphill battle.
No, I think I wrote about this in the Power Rankings this week, but I think of South Carolina, like they've obviously been very successful in the Don Staley era, but they've also been a little rigid stylistically. And that's not necessarily a bad thing when you have the talent to fit that mold, right? Like they've always had very good frontcourt players. The WNBA is just littered with South Carolina products, you know, coming Asia Wilson, Aaliyah Boston, you know, Camila Cardoso. Like there's a reason they play that way. And it's because they have the personnel to support it. And so it was just so interesting to me that Don Staley was like, you know what? Vanderbilt's a team that gets a lot of motion in the half court. You know, they get up a lot of threes. We want to be a little bit more flexible defensively, a little more switchable, more speed. Didn't really start a center. You know, Joyce Edwards, I wouldn't call her a center. They take out Medina Okot and put in Agat Makir into the starting lineup. And they were just fast, like just blistering fast to start this game. And you can tell Vanderbilt was not prepared for it. I mean, why would you be to think that South Carolina was going to change its starting lineup when they've literally started two bigs together since 2019, I think. Incidentally, the last year they also lost 2 games in a row. And I just thought it was really interesting from Don Staley to be that flexible, to be that creative. It worked, you know, magnificently. I would expect Okot to be back in the starting lineup when they play Texas A&M later this week. But to have just that trump card, you know, like we're going to try something a little bit different. We're capable of doing this. Not something I would have expected from South Carolina, and just gives me a little bit more faith, honestly, in that team going forward because, like I said, they've always had a blueprint of how things are done the Gamecock way, and for them to expand beyond that gives me a little bit more hope of how they can adapt to potential future opponents.
Chantel, I was looking, that very first play where, not even first play, but the first defensive play where Tania Latson, you saw Aubrey Galvin turn the corner, thinks she was going to get a nice little crossover. And Tania Latson was like, no. Goes the other way, gets an N1. Later on, you see Agat Makir do the same thing in open space. And it was just like, oh, this is gonna be a long night. This is gonna be a very long night. When you think about Vandy, they had a really good run up to this game. Like, what exactly about their game? One, Michaela Blake's not being able to score really until the second half of the game. What did you see in Vandy that was pretty much kind of choking their success against South Carolina?
South Carolina. Like, that's the thing. It's like, I think Vanderbilt is still a very good team. I think they have a lot of pieces to do well in the tournament, go further than they've ever gone. The problem is that, like Sabreena said, I think Don Staley made the right call when she looked at it and said, we're going to give up a few inches of height here in the paint, and what we're going to get is a quicker, more reactive defensive team. And I think getting into the passing lanes was really smart. Getting into Aubrey Galvin, a freshman point guard, she only had 1 assist the entire first half. This is a team that I think they averaged 12 turnovers a game. They had 8, like, first quarter, first half. Like, it's just the amount that they got into them, into their bodies, into the passing lanes, sped them up, to do that to, knowing that they have a freshman point guard, like, I think you can kind of like gamble there a little bit because this isn't a fifth year guard who's going to know how to handle that. And I don't think that Vanderbilt had seen a team play defense like that this season or play that quick. And so I think it was a smart call. It was the right change up at the right time. And I think then you look at South Carolina and how they turned their defense into their offense. And I think when we've seen the South Carolina team at their best, they are firing on all cylinders, but they're using that defensive energy and efficiency to turn in fast break points. And I think that's what we saw against Vanderbilt.
Okay, well, I'm very curious as to what's going to happen with Vandy in their bounce backs. I mean, we haven't seen them take a loss this season just yet. So, Chantel, who's coming up next for Vandy, and what should they be able to capitalize on in that next matchup?
Yeah, they've got Ole Miss. And so I think it's, just coming back into themselves. I think Michaela Blakes took a little while to warm up. And again, I think credit to South Carolina here on that one. But she was a big reason why Vanderbilt was able to cut it to 7 in the third quarter. And you look at this team, which is younger and has newer faces and a new composition. We're far enough in the season that shouldn't matter as much. But I think when you think about the way that they bounce back after that first quarter, it tells you a bit about the character of that team. And I think looking forward as they play against Ole Miss, I think we'd expect the same. I think Shea Ralph is going to have this team ready to go. And I think Michaela Blakes is going to have that okay, I took that personally. We sort of saw how she clawed back, but then it was South Carolina's depth was just on display in a way that Vanderbilt didn't have, where I think it was they went on a 27-8 run after Vanderbilt cut it to 7. Vanderbilt doesn't at that point have the depth to go 1-for-1 with them.
Okay. All right. Well, let's keep it moving to another game that showcased a team's dominance and their depth as well, I would say. Iowa made it to 8 straight wins on Sunday. They rolled past Ohio State 91-70. Sabreena, I was at number 7, okay, on your list. They went up 2 spots from number 9. What stood out to you in this game, and how did it factor into your rankings?
Like you said, a lot of depth on this Iowa team. They suffer an injury to their starting guard, Taylor McCabe, within the first minute or so of the game. Just no problem bringing freshman Addie Deal, and she had her best game of the season, 20 points. Just really crafty, getting into the lane, some off of cuts, just super comfortable with the ball in her hands, which is not exactly the kind of thing you expect against an Ohio State team, right? Talking about pressure defense, for her to feel that comfortable against a Buckeyes team that makes everybody look a little bit on edge. We saw it even against TCU with a veteran guard like Olivia Miles. I thought that was a very impressive sign for Iowa that, one thing gets out of the rotation and now all of a sudden you'd think things would get a little bit disrupted, but no, they seem very comfortable. And then also this is the way Iowa wants to play, is through their front court with Ava Hayden and Hannah Stuelke. And, we saw their first real test of the season against Iowa State. Neither of them really were up to the challenge, but ever since then, Hayden has just been super consistent, not getting into foul trouble as easily. Stuelke, I think, has taken a real leap forward, which is, how long has Hannah Stuelke been in college? I can't believe how long we've been talking about.
We keep talking, not only that, we keep saying she's taking a leap forward. Every year I feel like she's taking a leap. Number one, just from jumping through the roof every year, adding inches to her vertical. But there's also just consistently getting better and more poised. It seems like her game just gets a little bit more refined each year that she's in college, which at this point we do need to check.
Right. Well, she's had, double figures in 10 of her last 11 games, 5 in a row now, double doubles in 3 or 4 of those. So it's just the type of consistency you hope for from your veterans, right? Like Hannah Stuelke. And, I just like watching this Iowa team. It doesn't look like the Iowa team that was very good 2 years ago, because obviously their personnel is very different. It's never going to look like that Iowa team from 2 years ago. But anytime you can look that comfortable against the Ohio State pressure, I think is a win, even if it's, at home in front of your crowd.
Agreed. They looked really, really good. And it's also, I'm not going to lie, I got to put some respect on Iowa, because when we first saw, I looked at their game against the Iowa State Cyclones, and you saw Ava Hayden not win that battle. I think the Bigs did not win that battle against Iowa earlier in December, right? 74-69. Iowa State took that game, and you're like, maybe Iowa, this might have been a fluke. maybe we put a little bit too much into it. And in these last few games, especially as they've opened up their conference play 9-0, you're like, oh, excuse us. We didn't know what you had in their game. Chantel, what's popped to you? I mean, maybe other than a particular point guard at the helm of everything, but what's popped to you for Iowa?
No, I think both of you kind of hit it on the head. Like, I think what we've seen with Iowa is that they're best when they're playing through their front court. But right now, sort of the tandem play of Hannah Stolke and Ava Hayden is just really, really impressive. We saw Ava come on at the end of last season during the tournament when she was, called upon and hadn't really played much during the season. But like her last 3 games, so Michigan State, Maryland, and Ohio State, 20-6, 20-8, 18-8. Like, She's playing like a vet. She's playing like someone who's a 4th-year starter, like in conference play, in tough situations against ranked teams. So I think like having the tandem play of those two and being able, like their games are not as similar. She has, Ava can hit the 15-footer really well. Like I think just seeing them together is interesting. And then I was really interested after Taylor McCabe went down. She's a 3-point specialist for them. Like, obviously, with Iowa's offensive set, like that shot and having sort of that kind of a shooter on the outside who's so consistent is so important. How are they going to do? And to have the benefit of what Iowa has become in the last few years and to be able to bring someone off the bench like Addie Deal, it really speaks to Iowa's depth, which is not something we've always talked about with this team. And so I think they're a team that I look at as like really interesting moving forward, especially if Taylor McCabe is able to come back. It's Monday afternoon when we're recording. We don't know exactly what the injury was. We know she was going to get a MRI Sunday night, but like if Addie Deal can sort of get more minutes right now, if Taylor's going to take a little bit of time to come back and then she's able to come back and be 100%, like that just gives them more weapons moving into March.
Especially weapons that can create. We know Chitchat Wright can create, but the fact that, as Sabreena laid out, Addie Deal being able to create her own shot and being able to get into lanes and to space is always an added bonus for them. Okay, anything else stand out to you guys as you were watching the games over the weekend? I first want to just go ahead and put some respect on Georgia, taking down 2 big SEC competitors in Ole Miss and then Kentucky within the last week. And man, they look good. They look good, Sabreena.
Yeah, they do. They look real good. I would say that they have maybe 2 good wins all season, but they have happened in the last week. So it's a nice time to be looking at Georgia.
There you go. Give them some respect while we can. Anything pop out to you, though, Sabreena, outside of those 2 games you just broke down?
I'm just really impressed with Louisville all the time. Like super consistent, super steady. I'm eagerly waiting this Duke-Louisville game that's coming up on the schedule that's going to decide some sort of ACC supremacy. But yeah, just like, again, I didn't have high expectations for this team coming into the season. They don't really have that one star that pops out to you, but everybody just does their job, whether that's Mari Berry or Taj Roberts or, Scott coming in off the bench. Like it's a very balanced roster. It's like an old school college sports throwback, but I just like watching them play. They're just very, very solid all the time.
I like that. What if Duke and Louisville end up being the top of the ACC? Whoo! I mean, they're technically they're doing their thing right now. So they are right now. So it'd be very interesting if they were the bids out of the ACC after the expectations we had for them earlier this season, or even going into this season. Chantel, what about you? Close out with some of the games.
I think Michigan's third quarter against USC is standing out in my mind right now. They got outscored at home 31-13 by USC. And I think third quarters can be, not all the time, but they can be indicative of a team. And like coming out of halftime in what, they didn't have an 18-point gap to necessarily give. And so that to me stands out in sort of seeing how this group responds. I think I've been really impressed with that group, specifically Kim Barnes-Sarico being able to hold on to now a sophomore class when we saw so many freshmen enter the portal last year. So her holding on to that group and being so impressed with them last year, being impressed with what they've done this year. One quarter is one quarter. It's not like the sky is falling in Ann Arbor. They still won the game. But if we're like nitpicking here, I think one quarter that we could look back and say like, oh, interesting. That to me was an interesting quarter of basketball from this weekend.
We know how we feel about USC and their defense. And so being able to keep a team like Michigan to 13 is like, all right, we won't say too much. Good for them on USC side. But as you mentioned, Michigan won the game. Okay. Before we continue our conversation and get into our main conversation around IU football and how that connects to women's basketball, we do want to talk briefly about what's happening in Minnesota. Now, I understand this show is fun. This is an opportunity for a little bit of reprieve from the outside world. We're talking sports. We're arguing lineups. We're debating, if a team is a little bit better than they started at the top of the season. But right now, we want to have a conversation that is about humanity. This is not about politics. And if you're a parent listening around children and you haven't had the chance to have this conversation with them, feel free to skip ahead a few minutes. We'll get to that. We'll get back to basketball in a second. But for those that don't skip ahead, I do encourage you to stay around. This conversation is important to have. It impacts all of us as humans living in communities, caring about one another. And we don't want to ignore something that is impacting real lives. So let's open this conversation by stating what's happened. On Saturday, 37-year-old U.S. citizen and ICU nurse Alex Jeffrey Preddy was fatally shot by U.S. Border Patrol agents in Minneapolis during a federal immigration enforcement action. Officials said he had a handgun and was resisting disarmament, but videos pretty clearly show him with a phone in his hand while he was trying to help a woman who was pushed down by agents. This was the second killing of an unarmed protester in Minneapolis. Renee Good, mother of 3, was shot and killed on January 7th. Now, we do not get into current events in our show, but we've known several athletes, including Breanna Stewart, during her moment of announcement during an arrival this weekend, had an abolish ICE sign. We've seen Tyrese Halliburton of the Indiana Pacers call out what his thoughts were of the event. We're not here to get into the nitty-gritty of those statements, but clearly people are impacted by them. Chantel, this is your hometown. Can you give us a little bit of what's going on around you, on the ground, what you're seeing?
Yeah, Minneapolis is like a small town. Like it's the Twin Cities and the Metro, and what's going on here is going on all over the state and in other cities too. But like Minneapolis itself is like 400,000 people, and South Minneapolis specifically, where both of these murders took place, and it's really small. It's like 50,000 people. It's where I live. It's a really community feel. Like it feels like a small town. You see the same people everywhere, and it's also, I think Minnesota and South Minneapolis specifically, even if you just look at the last year, one of the last games I covered before I went on leave was the day that State House Rep Melissa Hoffman and her husband were murdered at their home. And there was a Lynx game that night, and Cheryl Reeve, was visibly shaken. And I think that speaks to how small this place feels sometimes. And Minnesotans love their sports teams, despite not always having the most success. We are a steady, strong people who survive the winters. And so, there have been some frozen eras in sports, and people still support. And I think there's a real connection and community feel when it comes to sports. And so, it wasn't surprising to see Cheryl speak out then. It wasn't surprising to see her at the rally on Friday during the work stoppage that happened across the city in the metro area. And this is also the same place where the Annunciation school shooting happened earlier, or toward the end of last year, at the beginning of the school year. And so I think it's just it's just heavy right now. Like I said, I live here, and we've had ICE patrols near my house. I drive my 3.5-year-old to school, and outside of every school and daycare, there are parents standing guard at the corners and at the doors in case agents show up. John Krasinski has a great column on the site. I recommend people read it. I think he really put into words what I'm trying to do right now as well. But I think Minneapolis is really hurting right now, and it's not surprising to see like Stewie speaking up about this or hear what happened at the Timberwolves game, because I really do feel like sports and the community are ingrained in this city. Yeah, I feel really proud to be from here and live here.
Thank you for sharing that. And our thoughts continue to be with you, with your Minnesotans, as you endure what's going on right now. All right, coming up next, we'll turn our attention back to the court. As I mentioned at the top of the show, Indiana University captured its first ever college football national championship under head coach Curt Cignetti. Hired in 2024, Coach Cignetti implemented very quickly a culture-shifting, aggressive rebuilding strategy that paid off with a national title this year. And I think it's important that we talk about things that paid off because there was money involved here. And that is important when we're talking about the success of IU. If you look at the IU football blueprint for a national championship in today's age, you got to kind of think about 4 pillars, okay? The first pillar had to do with that hire. Curt Cignetti coming in from James Madison. He had this swagger to him, which is always like really important. You hire someone that comes in and says, Google me. Like that's the energy that Cignetti was on.
To be clear, he said, Google me, I win.
There you go. Thank you so much. Thank you. Google me, I win. So you're hiring someone that's not just a coach. He's coming in with a swagger. He's coming in with this like CEO mindset of how to take over a program and change it overall. Then there's the financial aspect, the financial pillar. You're talking about Indiana not treating their football program as like a secondary sport and starting to spend like other programs were on a national level. They doubled their budget for football from about $32 million to $61.6 million in this past year. And it paid off. Their roster, they spent about $21 million on their roster from an NIL perspective. It paid off. And then you add the aspect of the right personnel. You hire Coach Cignetti, you pay him well, about just under $12 million a year. Good for you. You get the money, right? There's a big injection of money from boosters, from the Hoosiers Collective and other donors like Mark Cuban. And then there's also the factor that Coach Cignetti has teammates come with him. He had 13 transfers follow him from James Madison. And then they did a transfer blitz themselves, bringing in talented quarterback Fernando Mendoza over from Cal. They were able to get Pat Coogan from Notre Dame to lead their O-line. They had Carter Smith out on their offensive tackle line. I mean, these were great transfers that they were able to have build a team that was able to find success. So, is there a way for women's college basketball to do the same? We pondered on that question, and we want to have that conversation here with you. So, Sabreena, I'm going to open it up for you. Just thinking about the pillars I just laid out, when you think about women's college basketball, maybe it doesn't have to happen on that same level, but what could women's basketball be looking at in terms of that IU football blueprint that they could copy?
I think the most important thing is the coaching hire. You can talk about the money and the facilities, and we will talk about all those things, and obviously they play a part in this, but I mean, you don't call your shot like that at an opening press conference when you're coming into the Big Ten of the losingest program in college football history. And I want to restate that. The losingest program in college football history that has just gone through a 2-year stretch where they made the playoff and then they went undefeated and won the national championship. When you say I win, Google me, like it's because you have a track record to back it up. And I think just because he hadn't been a head coach at a major college program before, and like this is not some young buck in Curt Cignetti, like he's in his 60s, right? Like he's been around for a while. Right. I just think it's so interesting that like this guy was sort of hiding in plain sight and has been a master recruiter, a master developer of talent. And it took a program like Indiana that literally had nothing to lose because they had already lost more than anyone else to hire him. And that's, I think, where we have to begin this conversation because like I was sort of thinking, like, are there people at the D2 level who have been undervalued? People who, like, win a lot at lower levels of college basketball. Maybe not lower levels, but, like, not D1 level of college basketball who could do it at the D1 level, but just haven't been given the opportunity because their resume doesn't speak to it. And, Cignetti, he was at Alabama under Nick Saban. He coached at NC State when Phillip Rivers was there, was a quarterbacks coach. So, like, he's been in a lot of really impressive stops, just hasn't gotten the main head job at a power school up until Indiana. And, I'm thinking of people like Mark Campbell, not that Mark Campbell, the Mark Campbell of Union University, who's been, like, in the USA basketball system for a little while now. He has a career win percentage of like 86.6% at Union. So clearly somebody who knows how to win, but just has never done it at the D1 level. You think about like Meg Barber, who we talked about last week at NYU, who has won her last 76 games at the D3 level. Like, she's also been part of the USA basketball program. We mentioned got an invite to the Nike Hoop Summit. If she wanted to make the jump to D1, like, there's clearly a proven track record of just knowing how to put teams together and recruit and optimize adverse conditions, which ideally you wouldn't have to do with all of the resources that have come IU's level. But I think, like, to me, it really starts there. Like, this is a guy who just, again, he just wins everywhere, and his team is so disciplined. Like, I think what stands out to me about IU is that they had the second best penalty margin in the entire NCAA behind Army. Like, that's the peak of discipline, right? So, like, if they are going to make that few mistakes, like, that just really helps you win football games. It would help you win basketball games, right? Like, teams that just don't foul as much, don't turn the ball over as much. So, like, he has built this entire career, and it's very satisfying just as, like, somebody who enjoys watching, like, good leadership and, like, miracle success stories that he was able to come to this pinnacle. But, like, I don't think people like that exist everywhere, right? So if you find that diamond in the rough, that coach, then that sort of inspires a program to be like, hey, we got the guy, we got the girl, now let's put all of the resources we can behind them because we think that they can build something special here.
And you not only have to have the personality to have it be built, but you also have to have the personality to demand the resources necessary to support you. Chantel, I like the way of starting with the coach. I actually first think of Kim Caldwell at Tennessee. Of course, she came from Marshall before that, she was in the D2 coaching bubble. And so I feel like there are certain coaches there's certain programs around the country that are starting to say, okay, we can find teams look at the teams that are finding a lot of success at the D2, D3 level. Let's get them here. But then you have to have the ego to be able to say, okay, I deserve this amount of investment to be able to support the vision I have.
Yeah, I mean, I think money makes college sports work, especially at this point, right? And I think, like, I just wanted to say, I covered college football for 7 years, and Indiana football being good at football is still probably the most shocked I've been in my entire sports writing career. Like, I covered the Big Ten in football. The first year I covered the Big Ten for ESPN, I was looking back because I was like, we used to have to do these things called Big Ten links, where it was like you would put it on the Big Ten, ESPN Big Ten blog, and it was like, here's what you need to know about, like, Ohio State, Michigan State. And then it was like, and, like, the other schools that aren't really good, like, if you just do it, like, a few times a week, whatever. And, like, I was like, did I ever put up a post about Indiana? Like, they were 1-11 in 2011, the first year I covered college football for ESPN.
Dang.
Like, yes, just beyond shocking that they are good. I still don't quite understand it. But yeah, I think money is a huge part of it. And I think it's like the combination of everything, right? For sure. And I do think the coaching, especially in basketball where there's fewer players, like, you need really good coaching to win a national championship in college basketball. I think it's true everywhere for sure. But, like, I also think the fact that Curt Cignetti, like, brought players with him, which brought, sort of a level of built-in familiarity and veteranness to that team. I think that benefits him and the program as well. And I think when we were thinking about this, I didn't necessarily look to, like, Division II, but I was thinking to myself, like, let's say Wisconsin this year had decided to go with Aaron Roussel, if they had hired Aaron Roussel from Richmond. And that sort of feels like it could have had a similar, though maybe not national championship level ending. But in terms of elevating a program, like, if he brings Rachel Ahlstrom and Maggie Dugan with him, if they keep Sarah Williams, if they go into the portal and they get, 2 or 3 guards, if they get Olivia Miles, suddenly you have a starting 5 that's like, holy, like, this group can play. And that is not the case of late. And I think Wisconsin then becomes really interesting. I think the difference there is like, who is the Wisconsin donor or sort of like NIL benefactor that's going to bankroll this team? I don't know. Like, I just don't know if that's there, or if the appetite for women's basketball, or if there's, I'm trying to rack my brain. But like, Madison's a great college town. I went to Michigan. It's my second favorite Big Ten town after Ann Arbor. Like, it's great. I think it would be a good place to recruit to. Winters are hard. But other than that, I mean, they're in the gym all winter. Who cares?
Winter is hard for a lot of these teams. It's not
right,
really
exactly.
unique, I think, yeah.
Exactly. They're on the water, so it's like a little bit worse because of the wind chill, but I digress. But no, I think that's a place, and the Kohl Center playing there, great. Like, I just think that would have been an interesting, like, that was the first team that came to mind in sort of like our modern specific, hyper-specific moment of like the Curt Cignetti era. Like, what could have happened this season where we could have seen a huge turnaround? And I think something like that, where you're bringing in players, you're keeping Sarah Williams, who we've obviously seen have so much success at UConn, like, all of that together could have been really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, you think about the big donors. I mean, that's sort of what made me think about Virginia in this conversation, because, you have Alexis Ohanian, Mr. Serena Williams, Reddit founder guy, lots of things to his name, but has put in a lot of money into UVA, and like they've had, a modest amount of success in the ACC this year, but just like, Zena, you mentioned the football budget rising to $61 million for Indiana. I don't think it costs that much to build a women's basketball program, especially like even in this current environment, right? Like, Chantel, do you think like a sixth of that could really get the job done? Like, you're not even talking about major power players. Yeah. Like $10 million is really what you're thinking, to modernize a facility or, update a basketball court, like make sure that like there's good restrooms everywhere and like a good fan experience. I say that as somebody who went to a school where the football stadium like only had porta potties my freshman year. That's why it always stands out to me. But
that's crazy. I don't think I knew that.
The era of like our college experience in today's era of like covering college sports just feels so ancient. Like, Indiana football was bad. Duke had porta potties at its football field.
What? Had no idea.
Interesting.
Right. So I think, but like, you think about big donors, right?
College
like
football experience.
Alexis Ohanian is somebody who has shown a clear passion for women's sports, having been involved in Angel City in the NWSL, and obviously married to one of the greatest athletes of all time, and now putting his money into UVA. Like, that is a situation where you could make a real impact in terms of like what kind of players you could bring in, because it doesn't cost as much to build a roster. You mentioned $20 million for Indiana. Like, good rosters in women's college basketball, Chantel, like what budget are we talking about here?
Like elite, 3 to 5.
3 to 5, right? So I think the bang for your buck is a lot different in women's basketball. And also, like, you don't need to bring in 13 transfers from JM, right? Like, it's a basketball team. You only need 6 to 7 good players, and ideally you have a couple that are already on your roster. Like, I think it's just a quicker process. And I say it quicker as if like Indiana needed very long at all. Like, this happened in 2 years.
24 months. It was 24
It's like a more modest process, I think, in women's college basketball, because you only have to, build a team of 5 that's on the court, and you could theoretically like get this done with a lot less money than was invested in Indiana. So I think it's really interesting because, like, women's college basketball, I mentioned the word gatekeeper with South Carolina earlier. Like, Dawn Staley is the last, I think, new coach to win a championship, and that was in 2017. Like, it is hard to break in, right? Like, and yet we're in a situation in this NIL world with the transfer portal where it shouldn't be that hard, right? Like, it should theoretically be possible for a team to at least have 1 or 2 good years, and yet we're still seeing the same players, the same Kim Mulkeys and Tara Vanderbilt and Gina Oriemas of the world, like, win over and over again alongside Dawn. So, like, on the one hand, I think it should be easier because of like the financial like investment shouldn't be as big as it is in football, and yet we're still like, we're the last 3 champions in college basketball, right?
I mean, I think what's working against Virginia here is that they're from the ACC, and that's not talking about the ACC as a women's basketball conference. That's talking about the ACC as a football conference. Like, college football money is where a lot of the rev share money is coming from. And when I've spoken with coaches across the country, the programs that are getting the most of the rev share are in the Big Ten and the SEC. And so inherently, my mind goes to schools that are in the Big Ten and the SEC. I think you can bankroll it with outside folks. And I think that's probably what, a lot of programs who need to spend even more on college football are doing. They're just trying to get outside money for other sports. And I'm going to bring up a school name, and I'm just going to start by saying I am not comparing this team to Indiana football because they are not it. However, when we're thinking about places that there's probably both institutional support for women's basketball and outside support financially and a hunger for let's do this, Oregon really comes to mind because there is enough of a recency, or there's enough of a recent memory with what could have happened in 2020 with Sabreena senior year and Satu and Ruthie Hebard, and what could have been. And I think there's enough of that there that, like Sabreena said, you don't need a ton of money, but I think obviously with Nike, it's there. So you could have it if you want it, and if you get the right people in the right rooms. Oregon and in the Big Ten feels like a place that, if we're, sort of reframing this conversation with a school that hasn't won a national title in a first time, or a coach who hasn't won a national title before, that feels like another spot where, everything that's happening there, everything that has happened there, the ease of, getting recruits there, the Nike connection, Eugene in the summer is beautiful. Eugene in the winter. Again, there's a lot of places that are rough in the winter, but great arena to play in. Yeah, I think that could be one. Not Indiana football bad. I just want to clarify
that's
that.
Fair. No, that's perfectly fair. I'm hearing you all lay out all of these different factors that IU definitely had, right? Of course, they had the financial investment, they had the right coach, they had the right people coming in alongside that coach to establish, I like, what you're talking about, a veteranship, but really establish a culture, right? They were able to establish a culture of excellence that was able to bring them to that next level. And then on top of the financial investment to not only build out their roster, to pay their coach, they had this $90 million injection to upgrade their facilities and ensure that they had NFL caliber turf and all these materials that would help their players excel. Which one is the hardest to come by if you're a women's basketball team? Is it going to be that big time donor, that outside source of money? Is it trying to find the right coach that will come in and establish a culture that is going to propel your team to national championship level? Or is it trying to land the right transfers? From what you all just laid out, particularly the reason why I'm asking this question is that Dawn Staley fact is kind of sitting in my mind right now. That's the last coach to break into this space. I'm wondering, even if you have all the money in the world, even if you get the right transfers, being able to find that kind of once in a lifetime type of coach in this type of environment of women's basketball, it feels like that might be the biggest challenge, but I'm very curious to hear what you guys think.
I think the talent is really hard too. Maybe because the roster is smaller, it seems like it'd be an easier ask because you only need to get 5 or 6 good players, but the one really good player matters a lot more in basketball than it does in football, right? If you are a team built in the image that Chantel was describing, the Wisconsin roster, you still have to potentially go up against UConn in the tournament, and Sarah Strong still exists, right? So I almost wonder if the only way this works in basketball is you just have to get a number one recruit at some point. That may not have been the formula for football, but I look at the teams that I think could be on the rise as programs, and I think about a Vanderbilt where they have the investment part of it down and they have this massive plan to reshape their facilities, and it's going to be the best basketball facility in college basketball from what I understand when they're all done. And they've gotten Shea Ralph, who has the UConn pedigree as their coach, but the program only works because they brought in Michaela Blakes as one of the top recruits in the 2004 class. And that's something Indiana didn't do, right? They got all their people from the portal, essentially, their best players. But I do wonder in basketball, if you kind of just need the one home run player, I'm mixing metaphors here, I apologize, but the one no-brainer star player, and that might be the issue in women's college basketball, is that all of them kind of still go to the same places, right? 3 of the last 4 number 1 recruits have gone to USC. Jersey Robertson just picked South Carolina. Sarah Strong obviously went to UConn. Like, most of the best players are still going to the same places. And maybe that's what's keeping, the titles in all of those places, is because they just keep getting the very best players. And that matters more in basketball than it does in a big team sport like football.
I feel like that's a hard, because as you were saying all of that, Sabreena, I was like, yes, and they just lost by 30 to South Carolina this weekend.
Because they're on the upswing, they're not there yet.
Right.
Indiana had a big loss last year too. It happens.
Right. So I think that's so hard to think about.
Yeah. I just feel like stumbling upon billionaires who might want to invest in women's basketball.
Benevolent women's sports fan billionaires aren't just a dime a dozen.
Listen, but here's the thing, though. We have had enough conversations on this very podcast about people realizing women's basketball is lucrative. Mm-hmm. Whether you are benevolent or not, if you are financially savvy, you are like, hey, this is a good investment. And we're seeing that by the amount of people that are investing in these leagues outside of the WNBA. And now people that are, finding a way to get involved with even NIL collects. I mean, let's not forget that I was shocked when the University of Miami was getting caught up in scandals around NIL. I was like, is this a good sign for women's basketball, that there's people secretly trying to inject money in schools, into talent? I mean, I say that lightly, but I do feel like it might be easy. I feel like it might be easier to stumble upon a benevolent billionaire that's willing to donate dollars to, their alma mater or a particular women's basketball program than it is to find a Gina Auriemma, a Dawn Staley, or as you mentioned, Sabreena, than it is to find a Sarah Strong. Or Juju Watkins. It's interesting. It's interesting.
The business aspect at the college level, though, when we're talking about these people giving money, there's not the kind of return that you're seeing for the people that are investing in the WNBA, right? Like, where they're eventually going to be able to sell their shares and whatever, or own a team and get a portion of what the team is making. Like, Mark Cuban, however much money he gave, he, was able to buy some happiness for himself in the form of celebrations of his alma mater. That's a part of the deal. I don't think he's getting a Shark Tank level return here in the bottom line. And so I think that's a little bit of the difference. And so I do think you need to find someone who, I was literally like, who are, Olivia Munn is an Oklahoma grad. Does she like women's basketball? I don't know.
That's real.
Who are people that I could imagine being with?
I don't know how much money the Judds are making. Yeah, I don't know how much money the Judds are making, but they are big Kentucky fans, right?
Okay.
So it's just like now we have this whole exercise of go through every celebrity and major money that you can, moneymaker you can make, and say, where did you graduate from college? Okay, let's keep it moving forward at least, and think about, we've named several schools today that we feel like could tap into the IU football blueprint. That's what we're trademarking it as. But if you were building a women's basketball program from scratch, okay? What part of the blueprint would you tap into first? Would you go get a big-time donor, go get the money all set up? Would you try and find that number 1 recruit? Would you try and find that legendary coach? Or it doesn't even have to be legendary. The coach that will be legendary upon winning, hopefully, a undefeated national championship. But what part would you go after first? Chantel, I'm going to start with you.
I mean, I think you need the coach, because you need the piece, especially in this age, of players being able to leave as quickly as they are, to sustain, like we were saying, Curt having a level of expectation and keeping players. But you need that coach. But then to take a step back from that, you also need good money to hire the great coach, right? And so then I wonder, is this actually a trick question that I'm tricking myself into right now? You didn't ask it. Yeah, it's chicken and the egg. Yeah.
It's just chicken and the egg. Absolutely.
And so I do wonder if it is, because I still think what we have seen, at least recently, with women's college basketball, the amount of money that goes around during transfer portal season, the difficulty with top players staying in a place that isn't established. We've seen South Carolina and UConn be able to hold on to players, but that's because, of who the coaches are, what they've done over the last decade, and what the program has become. And so I almost wonder if it is a chicken and the egg, but probably you need the money to make it all work. Right?
I feel like
I think you're right. I think you need the benevolent billionaire first because you got to hire the coach because the coach is what recruits and keeps people. Like I'm looking at Indiana. They were 3-9 in 2023, and then they hire Curt and they lose one regular season game, right? So that's
what is Curt's salary? What's he making?
$11.6 million.
He just signed a new extension. Yeah,
and exactly. He just signed a new extension. Mm-hmm.
It's a good number.
Yeah. So
it's not like an NFL commentator number, but it's a good number.
Facts. That's facts. So it looks like Indiana University's national championship title secured a $2 million bonus for head coach Curt Cignetti, who earned a total of $14.675 million in total this season. So,
guys, we're all in the wrong field.
That might be fair. That might be fair.
We don't win, Chantel.
This is interesting though. I because I think about the benevolent billionaire that might be like, oh, you've got this coach. I'm now more willing to give you more money because I believe in the vision of this coach. This is a fascinating conversation, and one thing is for certain: athletic directors around the country are having this exact conundrum across their desk every single day as they look at their bosses, the boards that they have to speak to, the owners that are basically not owners, but donors that are giving money year in, year out and wanting to see their programs across football, basketball, all sports at their alma maters perform well. These are the types of questions that they're having to ask. Who are we getting in? Is it the coach first? Is it the talent first? Is it more money? What do we have to do? So I'm very curious, for those of you that have been listening to us, just kind of ponder about this. What are your thoughts? What needs to come first? And are there women's college programs that you're seeing already follow this blueprint? Give us your opinion. We definitely
And who's the benevolent billionaire that we have not thought about?
We have not thought of. Exactly.
Do we think Olivia Munn is a billionaire? I don't know.
I don't think she is. Yeah.
I don't quite.
So she might be a majestic millionaire. But we can
manifest it for her if she so wants that.
Magnanimous. That's the word I would go with.
Magnanimous millionaire. Yes. In either class, again, like we said, you need $3 to $5 million a year for like an elite women's basketball roster. So,
okay, the math is there. The blueprint is laid out. Shout out to Indiana University. Congratulations on their national championship. But we'll see, are any women's college programs literally copying and pasting? Don't go anywhere. On the other side of this break, we've got a listener question. Okay, so before we get out of here, we just got to give a shout out to our listeners because you guys actually do what I tell you to do. You send in questions, you give us our comments, you write reviews. We appreciate you so much. And so we want to make sure that you know that we see you, we hear you. And now we're going to read a question from you. So even though we don't have a mailbag episode that's coming up, please continue to send in questions like the one we got from Andy, who emailed us and asked, is Bill Fennelly on the hot seat at Iowa State? I know injuries factor into their struggles, but it seems like this is at least the second year where pre- and early season hype has not even come close to being realized. Andy didn't care about those Audie Crooks games, okay? Andy was like, listen, things are looking a little stressful over here at Iowa State. Is Bill Fennelly going to lose his job? Thoughts on that? Sabreena, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think the short answer is no. Bill Fennelly has won 800 games, I think, 800 plus games in his college coaching career. That puts him in the top 25 of coaches all time. When you've gotten to that point in your career, I think you get to decide when and if you want to stop at a job. And, you look at his history at Iowa State, it's pretty decorated. He's got, a few Big 12 tournament titles, Big 12 regular season title, like some great players have come out of that program, like Ashley Jones comes to mind immediately before Audie Crooks now. Yeah,
Bridget
at
Carlton.
that age, at that longevity, Bridget Carlton, right? It's your decision, I think, at that point. Like, unfortunately, as disappointing as this season might have been for Iowa State fans, recently going through, I want to say, a 5-game losing streak in Big 12 play. At least Ariana Jackson's back, even if Addie Brown isn't yet. But yeah, I don't think this gets resolved by Bill Fennelly losing his job.
I think I disagree with the question, just how it was written. Like, I don't believe the hot seat yet exists in women's basketball, women's college basketball, I should say. Like, there are programs we can think of where it's like how, sustained years. And when we think of specifically like the Big Ten and the SEC, where there is more money because of rev share and the football contracts and the TV and their athletic departments. When you look at, the athletic departments that make the most money, those are Big Ten and SEC schools. Big 12, less so. Bill, I think, has a lot of goodwill there. But also, I don't think we're at the point in women's college basketball that a hot seat actually exists. I think even last year it was like, I think in men's college basketball, they do like the hot seat tracker every year. It's like, these coaches are on the hot seat. And like I wrote something like coaches to watch that have like interesting pressure on them. Because I was like, I don't think any of those people were going to lose their jobs because I don't think the hot seat exists. It was like people that had interesting situations with their rosters or, change over year or like an interesting question mark. And I still feel like when it comes to college hoops on the women's side, there's more understanding. Like, oh, injuries happened. You can have someone who misses 2 weeks and they happen to miss 4 of your, top 25 games. Like, that is a reality that can happen. And so I think there's a lot of explanation and understanding. And I just don't think the hot seat exists.
And
I think we're getting to a point, though, because like the interest level in women's college basketball is at a, I look at a lot of these longer tenured coaches in women's hoops, and it's like this would never happen on the men's side where you top out at the Sweet 16 every season for 10 years. Like, you would never last 10 years on men's college hoops with that kind of resume. And I do wonder if more people are putting money into college basketball and want to see a return, like not necessarily a financial return, but a happiness return. And it's like, hey, why haven't we gotten, past the second weekend of the tournament? Maybe that's what spurs the existence of a hot seat. But I'm with you, Chantel. I don't think we have one now. And if we did, Bill Fennelly would not be on it.
Yeah. No, I think there's a similarity of like the evolution that we're even seeing in the WNBA. The hot seat wasn't really a thing as much in the WNBA until there was more visibility, there was more money involved, there was more pressure.
It's arguably a little too hot.
Yeah, right. It's a little bit too hot. You said
pendulum
the second you
put
your butt to it. Exactly. So I think and also what we just talked about, the goodwill is a really great point of like how you put it with Bill Fennelly. It's not just goodwill. I think a lot of these college programs realize how hard it is to find really good women's college basketball coaches. And so they're kind of a little bit more lenient maybe in that regard. But yeah, I think it's developing. It's just not there yet. That's a good point,
I think
Chantel.
you look at like the hires that were made last year and you can think of some of like the larger schools hiring or the power conference hirings. Wisconsin with Robin, Houston with Matt Mitchell. Like, these were coaches that didn't have buyouts. Like, we're not even seeing universities that want to pay buyouts right now. Like, and so I think that's still an indicator. Like, once that will probably precede the hot seat conversation in women's college basketball when we start seeing programs that are willing to poach and then take on the buyout of a coach regularly. Then I think we can say like, okay, the hot seat era is here.
Ooh, okay. Still growth to be had in the women's college basketball space. And I'm happy that we have IU to help us chart the course. But also,
no task is too tall if IU can win a football championship. Literally no task.
In 24 months at that. In 24 months. All right, y'all. That is all we've got for you today. Join us back here on Friday. We'll have more in the world of women's hoops, as always. And don't forget, you can help us out by filling out a quick survey about you and your podcast habits at theathletic.com/survey26. As a thank you, 3 listeners will have a chance to win $100 in Amazon vouchers. We value that feedback, and we implement it. We do put it in. So make sure you go fill out that survey. You'll find the link in the episode description. If you haven't already, which I am surprised slightly offended, but, I won't take it personally. Go follow our show. Folks, you need to follow, you need to subscribe. Let your friends know, let your mom know. We're a great hang, okay? And go head on over to our partner. Yahoo Sports Hub has more content for you to check out at sports.yahoo.com/women's-sports. On behalf of the Athletics, Chantel Jennings, Sabreena Merchant, I'm Zena Cada. Thanking you for listening, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in to No Offseason. To hear more, be sure to like and subscribe. We drop new episodes every Tuesday and Friday.